Oh, you mean the FBI? I'm going to give you two sections. We're talking about Charlestown. And what becomes more and more evident as we go forward is there is great difference culturally, ethnically, whatever, between Charlestown and the northern part of the county. When you come here, you think every town is just a little bit different. No, they came from different buckets, so to speak. I've said this before. This county is very unusual because I've looked, others have looked. You can say that the first original, you know this already, ethnic groups that were the building blocks of the United States up to the Civil War, each in relatively equal proportion, 1, 2, 3, 4, were here. All the counties down in the valley only had 2. Counties in Pennsylvania had Quakers, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But this is what we had. And today we're going to pick out 2 of them. That's the whole point. We're going to pick out 2 that came from the Tidewater. In 1710, you had dissenting Germans, Anabaptists, Mennonites, Dunkers, seeking their freedom here from persecution. And they, of course, came to Philadelphia, came south. They heard about the great soil. There have been quotes who said it's the finest soil in all the colonies. That's what I mean. It is Eden. It really is Eden if you struggle as they did. So first the German settlers, farmers, their families, they work hard. Next, right on its heels are the dissenting Scot, Ulster Scots. It's complicated, just say they're largely Scots, dissenting Presbyterian Scots. They too follow the same path. Everybody is have terrible experiences with their land being confiscated and so on. And they too hear the news about this incredible land here. And they too settle, build the cabins. They teach everybody how to do a log cabin. They teach everybody how to party. They call them camp meetings, but we call them parties. Make up a wedding, just make up a wedding, have a party for 3 days. That's what the Germans and the Scots had in common. One had whiskey, one had beer. But there's 3 and 4. That is where it gets interesting. Interesting, see, I'm in the city, like, this is, interesting is an understatement. And this is why they are here and nowhere else. What is here? It's Jefferson County. Today, it's today's Frederick County, Clark County, Berkeley County, Jefferson County. Then it was called Frederick County in the 1700s. We had the great soil. Not even Berkeley, we had that limestone soil. Okay. This is how I make sure I'm making sense. Here we go. It was so fascinating for me today to see all those little pieces. You know how you have gears and they're both buzzing like this? Well, today I was sleeping and the gears meshed and all the facts started buzzing. Between 1639 and 1649, a variety of civil wars raged against Charles I in England, who held dearly to his divine right as a king. He described kings as little gods, and he balked at the Parliament for wanting more powers in governance, and there are many other issues. The warfare unstuck old English families loyal to the king. An Anglican church and the Anglican church for generations. The Washingtons were living in Durham County near Newcastle upon Tyne, much closer to Edinburgh than to London. They had their land confiscated, which means they must have made a lot of noise in the name of Charles I. So they were related by marriage. This is where the politics come in. The Washingtons were related by marriage to one man who's key. He's the guy who has this vision. Sir William Berkeley. He's the guy who seems to see what we're seeing today. He was King Charles the first man in the New World, his colonial governor of Virginia, and Berkeley saw an opportunity to recruit, all these disaffected royalists, especially from the hardcore, longtime Anglican monarchist stronghold of southwestern England. And he said, come to the tidewater of Virginia. Virginia needed a class of people steeped in their faith to the state Anglican Church, all with the same common values, lifestyle ways, a life of calm and grace. Remember that line from me. While the fields were being plowed or picked or homes built by others ranking lower on the strict hierarchy of class. High patriarchy, fancy up, rankings are everything, land ownership is everything. The most serious business you ever go through as a young man or woman is courtship. Even with Cromwell in power, though, this Berkeley guy, all his wheels are spinning, he's got a plan. Berkeley recruited hundreds of indentured servants and laborers with their families, in a great degree, all also from the southwestern region of England, to come to Virginia and have freedom and opportunity. So what's going to happen? He's putting all the pieces together, the bait for potentially very wealthy people to come. Berkeley was consciously putting into place what Virginia could offer some wealthy Englishmen to come to Virginia, this is what happens, a very small minority, because they're very similar and have the same values, could effectively govern or simply control a much larger majority of the population. That's like Scots, Irish, and all those troublemakers out there, And I love this. He pointed out to them the 5.2 million acres across Virginia, starting at Fairfax County, it's coming all through here, that Charles I gave to one of his trusted advisors named John Culpeper, first Baron Culpeper. Where they came up with that name stuff. But now a guy has 5.2 million acres. Charles I was beheaded in 1649, and for 11 years, Cromwell and his army ruled with an iron hand. And here we go. See, they're putting it together. All my servants and neighbors in the they're gentry. I live in the Southwest. I see people taking the boat. I see a movement here. Everyone's going there. And then they go, what? 5.2 million acres going begging? Right? I'm going to put a quarter there or tenancy. I'm headed out there. And you also notice another piece coming. Now, this is where it happens. The gentry migration to Virginia started with the Carters in Chichester, which is in the Southwest, the Lees, who were eventually the wealthiest, from Worcester, the Wormleys from Hatfield, the Birds from Manchester, the Pages from Greenwich County, and Dandridges from Oxfordshire. In our area were the Birds, the Carters, the Dandridges, the Wormleys, and the Washingtons. There we have a lot of them. Oh, and Fairfax, of course. Now I want to deal with this, and we're just moving on, but it's this. Hardly an accident or coincidence that in 1660, Cromwell gave up. Charles II is restored. Big year, 1660. He said, I'll do certain things you want me to do. I'll obey what the Parliament wants, but restore me. The Stuart line is back in power, 1660. Now get this. That same year, Charles II gave his order that the creation of the Royal African Company be given a monopoly with rights to build forts and holding centers in the coast of Africa, while and during their apprehension and transport of African men, women, and children to the New World. You can just see a massive juggernaut started. There came a point when nobody transported more obtained black folks for slavery than this organization. So you see, the pieces are developing. You're seeing Virginia coming together with this idea. It all fits. The same year, you already do this. Okay, in southwestern England, in its long past for several centuries, I'm trying to explain this fanciness, this high-mindedness of Washington, but then this very damnable little thing about slavery. So, this is one reason. In southwestern England, in its long past, for several centuries, they practiced enslavement. And for a longer time than in other regions of England, they had a penchant or pre-inclination to take it up again, say, in the New World. So, you see all the pieces. Remember, this is just something that's going to touch Charlestown, Shepherdstown, all the others. No, it's just its unique little thread. Because all those families are clustered around southern Jefferson County, and of course the Washingtons practically on their land was for Berkeley and Charleston and Ransom. Okay, the New Virginia under Royalist leadership welcomed the massive appearance of African persons and responded in 1702 with the first detailed rules of enslavement. See, that's very Virginia. You get very legalistic really fast. You enumerate millions of powers. And what I'm going to do here is say a few things about people of color, what they faced. I'm also going to make sure you see their humanity. You see the part that's beyond just being enslaved. Just this one comment. I want to give everybody, remember there's 4 groups. We're talking the Royalist Anglicans is number 3, and the enslaved persons who are coming up here with them is number 4. So I'm going to give you what their slant is. And this is told me directly by descendants. Many in bondage, yes, lost lives here. Most feared was being sold further south, or the thoughtless breaking up of a family in a sale. This is here. As one said to me, and this is probably to all through the ages, we weren't afraid. We just had to get along. That says it perfectly, you know. We just had to get along. So, this is the part that I found in diaries and travelers, which is so overlooked. What they'll never see is this. And I'm basing this on a plantation in Jefferson County, the Bower. Long nights around a big fire, making hoe cakes and cooking hog on a spit in the quarter is where songs were sung, marriages begun, community maintained beyond the overseer's eye. Nocturnal visits in the 1750s by New Light Baptist preachers like Shubal Stearns planted the inspiration of the Black gospel experience, still thriving today. So, always remember when you're looking at these things, the servants in the main house learn to read and write, and they tend to identify over time with the planter's family. Field hands saw only the overseer and not the planter himself. And the overseer, of course, was taught to deal with them with an iron hand. And one thing I discovered that really surprised me, they would stay up all night with these things and get up in the morning and work. There was one guy who walked 5 miles every night and 5 miles back to see his wife at another plantation. They took that, that's what I'm getting at. What I learned was underreported is the field hand's incredible fitness, even with little sleep. And one last thing, this is just for you to note. I was told by 2 people who were highly respected in the county, Bertha Fox Jones in one case, and Jim Taylor, who, you know, everyone knows in Charlestown. It was their families. In some cases in our county, they would be expected, the enslaved persons, to be breeders, both men and women, to supply the Deep South. Bertha Fox had a story, and Jim Taylor had a story. His ancestor was William Payne. And so, what can I say? Just put that away. Everything has a dark side and light side and all that. We just have to figure out what to do. I just wanted to give a voice to those things. And we're done with that opening remark. Do you have any questions at all, or indignant replies, or curious? That took a lot of work to squeeze that out, by the way.
What about the indentured servants?
Yeah. Okay, Doug, you got it. There, what we're getting at is there was a case like 1640, and it involved a slave named Emmanuel, and two other guys, I think were like Scot and Irish, and you know the story.
No.
Okay, well, this is the pivot. See, it's all these little moments in legal life. Oh, everything's changed. Four of them escaped. I have my specifics, but they all escaped. They all were indentured. Before the period I described, it was very flaky. Is there everything's all mixed up. Everything is what it was. You know, some were free, some were not. If you were baptized, you become free. All these different patterns. When they were captured and brought back, they said to the Irish guy, okay, your indentured servitude is extended by 3 years. And you, Mr. McDonald from Scotland, yours is extended by 3 years. Emmanuel, nothing said. It means there is no, you're in another category. And they actually passed a law that said Negro equals slave, you know, period. And so, you know, it's that thing where very carefully, remember now, there was only 1,000 people who were enslaved for years, just kind of shopping around, kind of mixing in. But when see how it all fits when the Royal African Company raises the number to 200,000 in Virginia, triple that of any other state. You have to have rules, and the rules start getting tighter and tighter. And that, you know, you got the pattern. But that was that little moment, right? That little moment that changed history. The judge just made it. Let's do this. Thanks for that question. Yes, ma'am.
How did some of Culpeper's land get claimed? Was it staked, or do you have to buy it?
No, okay, all right. That puts, okay, this will lead us right into what we're gonna be doing here. So what I've done is place you in the 1700s, and as of 1725, let's get old Tommy up here. See, you put us on. Hey, Cindy. Oh, never mind. I'll just show you. Let's see the picture of it. The long and short is, there's only two, it's 1720, it's only Scots, Germans, and then that 5.2 million acres, which you can push it back to Lord Fairfax, to the beginning, back to George.
We're going in the right direction.
Just keep popping back. Well, it's all right. We'll do it later. Keeping the context. Lord Thomas Fairfax is in his 20s. Baron Culpeper he died in 1660. It's really strange. The guy who gives him the land dies. And some people who got land from Charles I thought it was laughable. They thought it was not even enforceable. But this one stuck, 5.2 million acres. And then it's Lord Thomas Fairfax in his 20s inherits it in the 1720s. What do I do now, boss, right? And right away, the those, you can see what's happening, all those guys who have made a ton of money on tobacco are now faced by 1720, the malnourishment of the soil because of the use of tobacco. And they keep hearing these glowing reports about the great money to be made from this wonderful soil here for grain, for wheat and flour for Europe. So you can see the dynamics. Then they're interested, and they contact Fairfax, and Fairfax rushes back to London just to be sure that this map is right. This map goes beyond the Blue Ridge. That's mine too. And that's where the trouble starts. But the long and short is, they start coming now because Fairfax has the land, and Fairfax moves here to protect his interests. You know, these are smart businessmen. Okay, so he's moved here and he's bought a suit. Now I'm gonna buy land. And they do one of two things. What was enraging to the Germans and Scots, for the Scots, is that they're repeating the pattern they fled. Working on it, for getting rent gouged by an English nobleman, you know. And the people I just described want to do that again. They call them, Rob Wormley had 11,000 acres in our county. The idea is they're called quarters. You divide people, you own all of it, but you have these little sub farms. Tenancies are when you do what I just described, people rent their own, but tenancies in quarters. There he is. So it's all those switches had to be switched. The tobacco is losing its value. There's the lure of another enormous profit center here with the wheat. Then you have this enormous increase of people who are enslaved, and a ton of land. And that takes us right to our guide. Let's go back to where George was. There he is. Did any of you read the thing? I gave you one and said assignment. This took about 2 years. This is a model of George at age 21. And I had a very simplistic vocational high school, how he did it. If you read that article, it's extraordinarily interesting and complicated. The guy was a coroner, he was an anthropologist, and he found out that this is really accurate. George only had one tooth for a long time. They kind of anchored everything, and someone says because he ate too many walnuts. But that's what that first article is about. Now, all that talk I gave you brings us to this point. We see all the motivation to come here, and some of you who know your history will understand the idea of who inherits land, eldest male. Maybe the first one of the family to come was there, but he has died. And now this next cycle, now that we're in the 1700s, it's going to be who's going to inherit it. Well, that big mansion in Tidewater goes to Bubba Sr., the oldest boy. And all the second and third ones start looking here. George, if you know it right, he had 2 older brothers, 2 half brothers from 2 different marriages. So by all rights, he's a classic younger son that had to go make his way. And Lord, did he make his way. I think I'd like to say this, I've said it before. When he was splashing across there, John Brown said it in 1859, was going to his hanging, he said, what a beautiful country. Looking over at Harper's Ferry. What a beautiful country. And George, March 1748, looks at the same land a little bit further south. Land is fertile as far as the eye can see. So this is the thing we're getting at. The land. The land has got this mystical quality. When today, land, oh yeah, that's the thing I have to mow every 2 months. Or that's the thing I gotta do some dumb thing with, or that's, you know, but for them, if you put a seed in the ground and you starve in Ireland, and the land, food jumped out of the ground, and you believe in superstition and myth, I was reading Samuel Kirchhoff, the best, most utterly authentic book you can find. It was 1830. He lived in Winchester and he talked about here. In one section, when spring comes, the kids and the teenagers would strip naked and run out in the field and just roll and crawl in the dirt to get its power, its superpowers from. They were serious. They had all kinds of ideas, you know. Can you see their mother when they come back? What did you do? I know, never mind. But that's how powerful this mystical bond was. The Earth Mother, Mater. Right? And this land, it was a place where the abundance was really hard to believe. So, I'm going to tell you one thing about me. This is about land. Does somebody understand that thing about the land? Sometimes real city folk, I kind of go, okay. Do you all sort of know what I mean? Especially if we were back there and had never had a land. I picked apples for many years, okay? I have a very dubious resume, but I did this for 10 years. And I normally don't do this, but my college asked me to write about my life in 1,000 words. Try it. And I did, okay? Picking apples, got a free lunch out of it. But see, this was my one experience of being really impressed by the land. Nothing could make the land more impressive to you if you've lived in it with no human contact for 4 weeks. And you're really tired and you just can't wait to finish. You're there, the only way to get through an apple orchard is to get to the end of it. And just bear with me, this is 1983. Not long. I heard about a remarkable subculture of families throughout New England who prune trees and pick apples. The exhilaration of this new life of hard work and broad vistas is most intensely felt after the last day of picking, when you're just happy to be alive. At Turner's Fall in 1983, with our station wagon loaded with ladders and boxes of drops, I remember stopping by the owner's house to say goodbye. I slipped away to say goodbye to the orchard, where I picked 30 tons of apples. I saw endlessly expanding scenery, mountains in dimming autumnal grandeur, distant glass-topped mountain lakes, all suffused in softly thunderous gusts of wind. The sharp white steeple in Turner's Falls was a mile away, but you felt if you could reach out and touch it like a feature in a painting. Later in the car, I wrote, "See the blessed land and see immensity. Hear, blessed land, and hear thunder in immensity. Behold, blessed land and immensity, and thunder with all your heart, and be broken in the right place, and become a river in blessed land. Become one with the soul of souls." Whoa. Thank you. Don't worry, well, that just came right, Okay, let's get on to business here. Let's see.
He's on the visual line. I have a quick question.
Please.
I just keep thinking, like, what was Maryland doing at the time? And where was Virginia bumping up against Maryland? Was Maryland doing the same thing?
They were getting that large surge that no one else was getting, part of Virginia. If you remember, Annapolis was another port. So they started all that and enumerating of all the little things you can't do. They did it too. But as a side comment, Maryland was like a Catholic state, right?
Yes.
And I can't help but think that all the persecution of the Catholics by the Cromwell people and everything, that they must have fled to Maryland.
They were very distinct, different places.
Oh, Lord, yes. But I finally understood where the Catholic thing went. Geez, Cromwell's guys just killed everybody and took their land and paid off their soldiers with the land they sold. Yeah, it's terrible. So Maryland.
But Maryland did the same thing over in Western Loudon, saying, I mean, they saw the same kind of land in Western Loudon.
Well, good land, yeah.
Yes, and that was like the breadbasket as well.
And you know, that's good you said that, though, because every decade when they did the count is every year, all that period, 879, 8, Loudon grew 500,000 bushels of wheat every year, and Jefferson County grew 500,000 bushels of wheat every year. Year after year after year, nobody was even close. So you're right, the soil was there too. Anybody bail hay here in their lifetime? See, we know. That's also forgettable too.
It's not
Peaches
forgettable.
Peaches.
Peaches, oh, buses all over.
You were, you were lucky, you were picking apples.
Yeah. Jamaicans think it's fun.
Peach fuzz in August is no fun.
Okay,
Yes, that too.
all right, let's do our slide thing. Tell me more, you know, are we doing all right?
So Washington surveyed for Fairfax,
Yes.
right? That's what it came.
Oh, yes, yes, that's what
I think this goes to your question. How did he how did he actually get the land? Did he,
He inherited it directly.
Fairfax did, how did Washington get it? Then how did the
Okay.
family?
Okay, very good. I need you to pull on me because I know too many things. The deal is that there was 2 half brothers and 4 brothers and 1 sister. That's George, all of them. Lawrence Washington was a real on the move guy. He married Fairfax. And that began the entree that younger George got. And George became real friends with a guy, William Fairfax, who I think was a cousin, who bought land up here. So that's sort of like family connections. And obviously, George presented himself well. I gotta make this funny comment if I may. We're gonna go into the granular Charlestown thing, you know. But, you know how would you want to be Charles, the youngest brother, with all of these alpha males, his older brothers? When the biscuit disc comes out, move fast. You can tell that Charles is kind of phlegmatic. You can really tell, right? And this is not just let me think like a human being. George comes and he just flashes across the board. He's 16 years old. In 4 years, they all have 4,000 acres that he surveyed. Just boom, boom, boom. He pulls a trick like that. This is a seriously detailed, focused, insanely ambitious young man. And you'd hate to have him for an older brother. So now, why did I say that? All this land was gathered up and eventually became 8,000 land they bought, Lawrence and everything. Even Charles, all the land that's Ransom and Charleston. Charles is the youngest one, the one that just wishes he could hide. As you know, he's you know, like all his older brothers are like this, you know. So George gets 8,000 acres in the possession of he and his brothers. And so many years pass and he goes, oh, Charles, okay, I got it. Charles turned 21 in 1750. It's not 1780. Let's go see him. Let's go see how he's doing up in Charlestown, right? You're George, you're a real stickler, right? You've got 8,000 acres in 4 years, right? Well, he goes up there. He makes sure to eat breakfast at Keys Ferry's Tavern, because he just knows you can't count on Charles, you know what I mean? And you can feel it, and he goes up there, and you know, George is looking for the house, right? He only had built 1 room. It's 1785, got there and, you know, long time. We didn't do anything. And so George makes it very, we'll show it on here. But can you imagine George, complete perplexity? Why didn't you, you know, just this? What have you been doing here? I'd hate him.
Did you say there was a sister?
Oh, yes, there was Betty. Yeah, and she married a guy named Fielding Lewis. They were right across the border near Berryville. Okay, any other questions? We're gonna get down, turn the lights out and do the Charlestown thing now.
You want the lights off?
We'll do one more thing. If I can play with the toy.
That's not working.
It's not working.
It's not working?
No.
Okay. Well, can I manipulate it?
Oh, it is now.
Well,
There you go.
all right. I don't think of anything else.
Never know.
And do we keep the lights on? The story was that Lord Thomas Fairfax really didn't see this coming, you know, and he's in his 20s. And again, putting a little bit of comedic spin on it, he'd been heartbroken in love, money, you know, and it calls up images of, remember the soap operas, tired? You could always change your name and move to another town, you know, remember that soap opera line? And he did. He moved to Fredericktown, which is like 100 crummy little buildings. In 1747, probably had a different idea of what he was going to find. Where's my castle? And he stayed he was the only, I guess it was peerage, that's the word? Only one of that rank to ever come to the States, and the onlyest, the highest ranking. And as I said, that is when all the other people who were ridiculously wealthy, the Carters and the Lees, started acting on this. So, which one? Oh, that's George. We had in one of our classes, the man who did the surveying with him, Carlina is her name, spoke and said her ancestor was the guy that did the surveying with George. This is it's called the Northern Neck Proprietary, one of those history terms you don't need or don't want or need to remember. But just so you know, Fairfax, this is all land, 5.2 million. Where are we? We are. Glasses are, there's a reason you have glasses. Well, here it is. This is Jefferson. That says Philadelphia. I mean, that's the name for the Philadelphia Wagon Road, which is 480. Yeah. And so now you're situated and we are really the boonies as far as they're concerned. Winchester is here. And Fairfax is this is Greenway Court where Fairfax moved. That the lawsuit over this land went on until after everybody died, after the Revolution, and it became very moot. Okay, so that's what I just said. And George splashes across the water, he begins to survey, right down there, just below the Clark County border. If you were to go about 4 miles from where he crossed, it's called Ann Lewis Road, and you go up Cabletown Road, and you turn left on Old Cave Road. This is the Old Cave. It's been known as Washington's Masonic Cave. And it was on the Selden Plantation. This was drawn by an artist with General Sheridan's army. That says G. Washington, 1748. And the hypothesis is when he's crossed just nearby in a very rainy spring, you know, he had to stop surveying because the rain got so strong, and you can just see him find some farmer. Well, there's a cave over there, you know, and so they might have taken shelter, but it's the only time I know it was really, well, 1748.
Is that private property?
Pardon me? Yes, and they're kind of, they enforced it. There was a day when people from the Summit Point Raceway would go there and party their winnings inside and so on. Okay. Early, everything was one story. The Scots come and you can tell it's a house that was first originally a cabin, it's 16 square feet, one story, you know, proper chimneys. What I'm showing in kind of a rough way is Nathan Haynes, a Quaker, Miller, Tanner, Sawmiller. He did, this is his house. Probably the oldest house in the county. And another one called Quarry Bank, but that's all that they found, that both were related to mills. And this is what George was sizing up. So Haynes, okay, let me come on here. This is from the Jefferson Fry map, 1755. This is the other big one. They were Quakers. I have a feeling that they just didn't want to live here so much when this whole royalist slaveholding population came in all around them. I think they just sort of went, no, this isn't for me. Worthington, very successful. 3,000 acres, 1735, he's here. That little structure, you know, we talked about Piedmont. This is a Quarry Bank as a kitchen. That is the second. That is the other very old structure still standing. And that's next to that humongous, impressive Piedmont. We'll talk about that. But this is all George saw. A couple of Millers. There's the fiefdom right there. I pretty much said all of it, but Lawrence is the older half brother. Augustine, who's is the other half brother. George, the eldest of the next second marriage. John Augustine and Hannah Busher, their land is very, very much. They have the greatest influence over time. Charles and Samuel Harewood, we're going to go see Walter there. We're going to be at Happy Retreat, and that's the whole family of that generation. And they're the ones who kind of really got a chunk of the county. What is today known as Charlestown was where the Washington family was developing a substantial agricultural empire. And all these little things, if you were to look at it closely, you're going to see Washington on many, many, many of them. And they're deep blue, they go back to the earliest days. See, that's the Lawrence, Washington. All of these here. And then this is, I think this is the Charlestown Ranson and Happy Retreat. John Washington's Prospect Hill, you don't need to know all of that. But this is John Augustine Washington's, all of these parcels. I got involved in politics when a developer wanted to develop all of this, most of this, with 3,000 homes. And his impact report in the submission said, we found no local, regional, or national historic significance for this property. And it was never not owned by the Washingtons. That's what makes you get involved in politics. And that's how I met John Washington. And the long and short is, we sued the planning commission for approving it. And when we filed our brief, that was just about when they, Hunfield said, we want to be annexed into Charlestown. And to dodge the bullet. So that's, pardon me?
Why were the plats all so irregularly shaped? Is that just because of the topography of the area, or?
The plats themselves?
Yeah, I mean, look at them, they're just weird. You would think for a surveyor, they would have some more regularity to them, but there's
Oh, I know.
triangles, there's.
You know what I think it is he's got all these claimants. And you just sort of take them one at a time. And that's how you end up with some weird thing like this.
Yeah,
This is the last one, you know, you gotta just do something with it. That's the leftovers. This is the main dish. Yeah. But that answers that. I hope you listen, please make the time to watch the video called George Washington and the Thompsons. Nowhere does it show you so specifically what lands George owned. And I show you what they look like today. Jack Washington, this is George's favorite brother. This is representing the people who were enslaved. They're just semblances, but I like to do this to give you the sense of humanity of all of them. I always like that line I told you. We weren't afraid of them, but you just have to get along. Because a lot of people, so many people did figure it out. Okay. John Augustine Washington bought 44 pairs of Negro shoes in 1777. He paid Nathan Haynes, the tanner I mentioned. I think that's shillings, pound, shilling, something.
Or pounds, it's pounds.
Pound, shillings, and pence. Somebody was gonna ask me that. But this tells you the whole thing. Negro shoes, as many as leather, that's what you need a tanner for. And this is daily life. He also sold Haynes lard, pork, and big. He just had livestock, cattle, and hogs, and a lot of wheat going on. These are real names that were. This is from a document that is of enormous historic importance because there's hundreds, easily 100 names and ages all through it, organized by family of people who were enslaved for John Augustine Washington. And they were probably the very same people who built Claymont and Lakewood, because an equal numbers was used to build those two later. But this is where you start seeing Suki and children $1,300, then you start really getting an idea. And the whole point I was making here is George wanted to find an east-west route to this area for trade. Everybody was coming from the north, trading by Jefferson, were getting good trade routes going to the north. He wanted to have a route that was all entirely within Virginia, where he had a lot of clout and influence and so on. And so there he is. He takes the ferry. This now what we're talking about is 1755 now. He has his contingent of Braddock's army, and they came into the ferry. And so let's just say that Charlestown at that point had a tavern in a truck stop, a blacksmith in a tavern probably was where Charlestown is. And so there was already a road developing east-west from Alexandria, but also to markets in Winchester, all the white. However, George started paving a new road. You see all this part here where King's South goes like this, and all these dots. He subverts the road so it goes directly through all his property. And while he's at it, he gets all his guys to build a well. See this guy here? That's Braddock's well. He had all his men build a well and a blacksmith shop on his brother's property, just to make sure. And he's practically forcing the road to go in route. Prospect Hill, Claymont, Lakely, and so on and towards. But that was just always developing, exploiting every opportunity. See, I'm pointing them out. That's where Braddock's well is located, and that's where Prospect Hill is located, which is gone. Claymont, Lakely, George, blah, blah, blah. So, I guess all of it's fairly obvious when you think about it. Making a town from scratch.
Can I just ask a question?
Pardon me?
I just wanted to ask a question.
Please.
About the indentured servants.
Mhm.
Once they started importing the Africans to be slaves, did they still have the indentured servants?
Yes, but do you know what happens?
Well, I can see they had a time limit, so by the time their time was up, I suppose they would have been.
This is the thing. Reader. you could read, you could get, you got my point. Virginia had a reputation for producing new slaves through birth. And you couldn't do that with indentured servant. So you suddenly see this exponential benefit. And now that we've said this, I'll tell you exactly what Jim Taylor told me. Thank God I got it on video. He said, William Payne, and I figured out who it was, who he worked for. He figured out William Lucas is a divine home. But Jim told me, this is early 1800s. William Payne was working for William Lucas. Jim didn't say William Lucas, but I figured out that the land that was given to William Payne with a name on it was within his property. So long and short is, he sired, I think about 20 children as a breeder. And he was very good. I'm just telling you, that's what it is. And then Lucas was so pleased, he said, you can marry the fine woman. And her name was Rachel Parrish from Holt, Shenandoah Junction. And he married her, but of course, that's not a regular basis for marriage. And then he divorced and he married a woman named Nichols, who was Jim's great grandmother. So I'm telling you one straight out, when he started telling me, my jaw was dropping. That's the answer.
And the indentured slave, were they paid something?
They were considered human.
They were not.
Black equals, remember, the law said.
No, I mean, the indentured, I'm just
White
wondering why.
indentured.
Oh, sure, oh, absolutely, absolutely. But can you see how quickly everything goes towards blacks because of the.
They were paid to get over here and they had to guarantee they would.
That's right.
Whatever number of
Okay,
years,
but they didn't,
but then they kept changing the rules when they were here, and so they never really got out of their. It was hard for them to get out of their indentured status.
and their children would not automatically be indentured. They-
That's
Right.
most of the slaves. There's a book called White Trash. Gives you the history.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
It's a great book.
Yeah,
What's interesting to us is it was just a couple of little decisions that happened at a certain place in time for certain reasons that changed everything. So I'm glad you're interested in that. I dug hard to find that. And this is not as interesting to me anymore. When you start thinking about common sense is if you got the skills and you got the land and you're producing, you can't lose with this land and the way to Europe. And then you figure that thing out, you gotta have good roads to markets. So let's keep going. We already did that. Somebody saw what we did with this. This is a photograph of a cabin in Charlestown. When the town was formed, I hope I got this right. If you built a house to spec, 16 square feet, which is it was just yours, it was yours. It was like payment in kind. And we did this already, but if you didn't see this, study that house. This is it today. See, one door became a window, apparently just a single family residence now. It kind of, I did not know how many very, very old structures are here. Now we're going to Hackney Retreat. The parcel in which Hackney Retreat is located in present-day Charlestown, and what was part of the 1,106-acre tract. Lord Thomas Fairfax granted to Lawrence, October 17, 1750. See, Charles, he started out with an automatic $1,100 acres of land, just bingo like that. Come on, Charles, let's go. And became his when he became adult. Well, yeah, that's right. He came with a pre-existing farming operation run by enslaved persons and an overseer with evidence there was also a mill. Now that's my joke, a very gradual development of the Charleston Mildred Washington's home Hackney Retreat. And we know there was he was not a big industrial farm slaver guy, he just had a few. Jenny, Elijah, they had 9 children. Patty Webster was another family. And they stayed with the family for a long time. These were 2 many multi-generation families, Elijah and Jenny, husband and wife. And this, as I said, I have not found a more, I think, Abby Aldrich owns this, the Rockefellers. And, paying 1780 or 90 of a plantation in South Carolina. So at Happy Retreat, we're gonna go there, it'll be our last trip. This was, part of this was a slave quarters and the other part was kitchen. This will all be as such. And then there's going to be, this is the land, as I said. This all went to Charles. See all the Washingtons? They did do so much, they're so committed to making this work. They go to Walter with his name and reputation, got an enormous ton of money. And they're doing everything they have to do. They generally raised this on a cinder block. They moved things to the exact location. Charles married Mildred Thornton in 1757. He took ownership in Happy Retreat in 1759. And 21 years later, they and their 4 children moved to their property here, using profits from the land sales in Fredericksburg to build the house. Now, this is what it looks like today, and we often go, oh yeah, Washington, 1830, that's 1830, that's it. Another man who wasn't even in Washington built the main house. You remember I was making that unfair comment because Charles is not here about not working hard enough on building the house and such and such. You're George, you're gonna meet his buds at Charles's house. He's gonna meet all his old friends and talk about business and everything at my brother's house at the retreat. And he goes there and he goes, is this all there is? Just the red part is all he's got done. See, it's not George. George, 8,000 acres, you got it. So you can imagine George is like little brother. Then it takes, and then remember 1785, it takes more time, 5 more years to build this. And then build this whole first floor over here. John, not George. I'm being unfair, but there's a difference, isn't there? And this is the room that's there from day one, where George met Daniel Morgan, Rob Wormley, a guy named Snickers, like Snickers got, they all met, and then they wanted to find a route to the west. He wanted to find a way where the Potomac River could connect the inland market of produce to the coast. And he wanted to find out why Charles wasn't collecting all his rents. Here we go again. I'm being hard on the guy, but as soon as they found out that how many were not being collected, he hired a guy named Battlemuse, Bataille, a really, really good accountant. And I think it was almost just a month after this visit. From that point on, George made a lot of money on rents. Oh, bless his little heart, Charles. Here's Washington, Lafayette, and Mount Vernon, 1784. That's exactly the year he went to visit his brother. Here they are. Having business to transact with my tenants in Berkeley and others. Practicing at Kai's, it's called Kai's. And many other gentlemen came here to see me, and one object of my journey being to obtain information on the nearest and best communications between the eastern and western waters. He's really like his friend. He's a cousin. And so right after this visit and all of checking up on his rents, he went to stay, like there's no room at the retreat. He went to Fairfield, where his cousin was. That's big. That's Fairfield. A man made a huge fortune later on as a hotel. Did any of you read what I was hinting at about this? I'll just tell you this, read it. Because what I found was one of the rarest accounts that I've seen, 1790, by a Frenchman And he came through this area, and the French had a very different slant on things, you know, than the British. And what happened was, he stayed at this inn, maybe not that big, but Warner Washington had just died that year, the year before. And his daughter was struggling to make ends meet by having a hotel. And that was Mildred, Washington Throckmorton. So this Frenchman, please read it. He's reading how she's trying to struggle to make things. He doesn't know she's George Washington's second cousin. And how she's trying to get everything together, 40 guests, all these people there, and she's cooking for him, but he could tell she's of a different order of people. And outside, there's this huge marketplace going on, and good Lord, there's some wild, you know when guys fight, and they bite off the ear, or they try to gouge each other's eye out? That was going on outside. That's what was so stunning about this. Holy cow, this guy really got some real story here. But this whole level of barbarity that I never imagined. Okay, but that's the story that I gave you.
So is that in private hands now, Jim Fairfield? Or is it?
No, I think it's been personal owners, and they're trying to always buy or sell it. Man, I described this in the early 1800s. If you go down, we're getting to an interesting point here. You're going down Route 51, Middleway Pike. This has to do with Piedmont, this big house is where Jim Larry used to live, and his wife Kate. And next to it was St. George's Chapel. And right away, we're starting to see that money starting to show up. See? The most elegant building I have seen yet in the colonies. Here comes the money. And now it's just a pile of rubble. But that was John during the Civil War. It was located on the property of this Robert Worthington, who I pointed out, who had a side building called Quarry Mix. It's all in one place. First big money that came here. Now this is what Charles was the only one with big ideas to match prosperity. It's John Briscoe and Eleanor Magruder Briscoe. Look at that. What are you doing building that in 1785? You know, the money's here, but you know, it's still backwoods. And you almost get the feeling the guy didn't know it wasn't quite that developed yet. Somebody said, where do they get the bricks? And anybody who knows construction, they got it from their own property. What it does tell us is there's plenty of good work. That's where Jim Lehrer lived, and see what it says? Piedmont, 1780, certainly the most architecturally impressive of the county's early central houses, Georgia. But there wasn't until Claymont was there anything that even came close in 1820. Okay. In the 1786-7 period, Charles Washington completed the legal paperwork to form 160 lots with a grid of streets named after family members, Lawrence, George, Charles, Mildred Washington, Samuel Augustine. And upon completing a 16-foot square structure with chimney built to spec, his building became owner of that lot. Okay, by 1810 census, 11 years after Charles Washington's death, 117 households have been created, including George Heights Hotel, Captain Cherry's Ordinary, and residents of a wide range of craftspersons. From one of those two freed black households, Goins was one family's name. The Goins, they have an ancestor at Jamestown. And another one of a family called Gracie Peace and Patty Delaney. It was from this that there came a most accomplished person. But this is running again, can we see? He got 1,600 signatures, landholders, convinced Virginia that this is where there should be a county seat, because at that point, he had to go all the way to Martinsburg. County seat was Martinsburg, and you know, you had business, there was a bias there. And so the Washingtons were very shrewd because they said, we're gonna have a marketplace. First, the market square is gonna have 4 lots. They must be for public use, not for commercial. And in fact, we hold the rights. If anything were to be done on any of those 4 corners, it's not for the public use. We donated to the town, not the county. But if someone deviates from a Washington family representative can intervene and say, no, you can't. They never lost control. You know, you see that Washington smarts. And that became extremely interesting later, because right after the Civil War, what happened? Okay, what was on the 4 lots? Kind of confusing looking, I apologize. There was a market square. And the courthouse was, that's where the original courthouse. And this, where the town hall is now, is the county clerk's office. The courthouse, the whole first floor was a big courtroom, and the county clerk was across the street. And this is the jail. See, here's what it looked like when John Brown was there. So each one of them is fulfilling its obligation of a public use. And what happened, it's interesting, later, we have this really nice building here, Murray Hall, right? And that was the county courthouse from 1866 to 1872. You know how towns are really scrap it out. How they like to get kind of down and dirty when they really want something. Gentlemen, it's still down and dirty. Somebody quietly submitted a proposal to buy this. And this is when it was in Charles Shepherdstown, in the county seat. And this is just kind of a mess, ruins, it broken down the board. Somebody wanted to buy it ostensibly to keep courthouse from ever being there again. And all of a sudden, you know, Charlestown and Shepherdstown got pitchforks out and they're really angry at each other. And it was a real nasty cat fight for about 3 years. Until finally people said, look, when the conservative elements regained power in 1872, they could take it back to Charlestown, and they should have, because it was the center of the county. It was accessible to everybody. And hey, you got a college out of it. You have any questions? I did this, took a long time on this. You don't know how old these structures are here. And so I took a woman, Barbara Rasmussen. She did the whole National Register nomination, and I plowed through there looking for the street address and her descriptions. Look at the dates: 1750, 1760. This one, this was a big tavern of some sort. 1780, and you can see something in common to the looks. That's just, so when you walk around town, it's sort of, Jefferson doesn't have that many that old. And I did not know there were so many. Fisherman's Hall, but you can start, okay, here's Captain Cherry's Tavern. This is really old. This is the first tavern. That's where you place your bets at the racetrack, remember? Royal Street here, you gotta have a racetrack. I think here you see the cabin look. You see what that cabin look is, small windows, smaller, squarish. Tenant houses, these all have the look. And you know, you can see they're all adjacent to each other. So if you walk around town, you sort of walk into the past. And of course, this is, as I said, this is the James Webb House. He was a free black who built the structure and had a business. Judith Rankin's ordinary. And I always like to say, you want to sell this circa 1789? Good price. But that's the neighbors. You know, you got a little problem with location. And this is the guy that discovered Home Depot. This is 1800s, 1700s, but this Home Depot arrived. I always thought when they were gonna do it. And so again, this is life around here, the Heights Hotel. This is right about on Washington Street, entering into town from the racetrack direction. Here's the old Yale Fairgrounds, you know, you had to have horses. We're gonna get into that when we do Scott Fitzgerald and this time here. They finally found where Charles Washington's grave site is. And this is what researchers love, when you find some little teeny thing. Okay, what happened was Roger Perry, a man who's very interested in this, looked at a map from like 1880. And down there was a little map about Charlestown. And down the little map inside the county map was one little tiny spot that said Charles Washington grave. And that's how we found it. That's pretty much all we got. But what we do have to say was on with this. There's just a side street. When I first came here, yeah, this was an open yard, and you could see into the yard. There was an old tree there. The Delaney's were free blacks. He's the one who Lincoln met in 1865, made him the first a field officer, a major in the U.S. Army, first black field officer in the Army. And Martin Delaney, who lived there and grew up there and was born there, Lincoln talked with him for an hour, and he said, "You wrote a letter to the Secretary of War, do not fail to have an interview with this most extraordinary and intelligent black man." The Delaney's were very bright, and their problem was, is they, a traveling salesman gave them a book called the New York's Primer for Spelling and Reading. And they went to work on it. It's illegal to learn how to read and write at that time in Charlestown. So they all got 5 of them and working on it. And then suddenly little kids start walking around town with these and are stopped because they have these curiously mangled looking little permissions from their owner that look like kidnapping notes, you know what I mean? And they started to trace it down to the ladies who manufacturing bogus passes. And that is when they started packing. They went to, his life was many lifetimes. But we'll simply say that they moved north, they went to Chambersburg, went to Pittsburgh, he apprenticed with doctors. He edited his own newspaper, he co-edited the North Star with Frederick Douglass. Goes to Harvard Medical School with recommendations from over a dozen doctors. After a semester, he and 3 others, under the pressure of the students, are asked to leave, even just because of their color. He's written, he decides he's given up on America. I'm going back to Africa. I'm going to be a scientific expedition. I have to, the future to slave act makes me not want to live here. So he's ready, he goes to Africa, he explores, he wants to set up a cotton trade between African cotton growers and England instead of the South. And he gets support from the chieftains. He goes to London and he tours all over, explaining this as a way of getting cotton during an embargo. Civil War's begun, or about to begin. And he's invited to a big event put on by Prince Albert at Somerset House. And there's the ambassador from the United States, George from Dallas, Texas, and partner. And Lord Brougham, who hates slavery, is chairing the meeting, and he says, "I'd like to point out to the audience that we have a gentleman, a Negro present, in our midst today, just give a speech and that's when Delaney brought up, he said, thank you, your lordship, for recognizing my presence here, and just to remind you that I am a man. Boom. It was chaos. It was chaos. The ambassador left, everything else out all over the newspapers. So his life was entirely like that. And we'll simply say that after the war, he was down in South Carolina, negotiating contracts between the planters and the free board. I kind of believe it at that. There's a whole lot, but act in the living present, but act. It says, I did not accuse of scorn the right and wrong. And if thou hast truth to utter, please say it all. Say it loud. So, I think that's all I got for today. Here he is.
Do you know the address where his house was, that picture you just had up there?
Oh, where his house was?
Yeah, what street is that?
It's right like where the journal is. At Side Street, you know, if you were to follow your eye, you'll be able to take your right to the United Methodist Church. It's a side street, I forget the name of it, I think it's, I can't remember.
I'm sure,
It's very close to the police department, it's the one,
okay.
that cross street, and it was on the, on that side I was describing.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, the intersection of, is it George Street and?
It's from Washington to, what's the street in front of, I think it's West Street where the United Methodist is.
That's right.
So you're like me,
Yeah, okay. No,
I don't know that well, but the journal's not there anymore. So that's what they have.
I see, trick question.
Trick answer.
Yeah. So talk to me, tell me something. I know, it's all right, I don't have any more.
Good, interesting.
That was great.
But so just, okay, I forgot, this is the best part. The best part, I stuck it in last night. Boy, lie down and go to sleep because you get the best part. Okay, this is becoming separate, but this is what I added. You remember I talked about how they wanted to be that Virginia Cavalier? You know, you dress really flashy, you're great with horses. You're kind of proud to beat the band and all kinds of fancy clothes, blah, 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 blah. And see, you know, Doug, the rig tournament, all these bros, you know, these guys who identify with that Cavalier thing are really identifying with one man who we call the archetypal Cavalier. Prince Rupert of the Rhine. And he led the cavalry of Charles I, and he was, oh boy, so many fluffy, puffy, but he's a crack shot, he's a wicked with a sword, he fought in the 30 Years' War, he commanded them here. And he was a scientist in his late life, he was really a hell of a, he really was impressive. But if there was dorms back in those days for these young Cavalier aspirants in their college dorm and they had a poster space, it would have been a Prince Rupert, okay? And this carried on. Next week, I'm going to show you a video that recreates a big ring tournament that happened at Shenandoah Springs. And all the women are all done up in period costumes. You see, they were loving Prince Rupert, and they're all reading Scott, what's his name? Come on, who's the Scott Irishman? The Scott writer. Come on. Romantic novels. Must be my age. And you're all gonna say, oh, I know him. I remember in a minute. Well. These went on right until the 1850s. And afterwards, this one in 1855, one in 1855 in Jefferson, they all congregated at the Antler, which is 50% larger, and they dressed in medieval outfits. And that was, and they were pulling from all these novellas from the Scot writer, who romanticized the Middle Ages and chivalry. So if they weren't looking at that reading that every day of the week, they were doing ring tournaments, and all of it was pure imitation of the Rupert Gestalt. Kind of, you know, they're kind of, they don't know, but they're kind of cute, you know, it's cute, silly, you know. And we got to show Rupert. That's the dude. That's the alpha male archetypal Cavalier. He was actually quite intelligent. He was a scientist in his later years. Those Germans, you know. Here's another one of them. Yeah, you know, he had layers of things. And when Prince Charles was beheaded, he had a large pearl hanging from his ear. I mean, who are these guys? They were very fancy. Okay, I'm done. In any minute, when I was right?
Is it Robert Brown?
No, like someone's good, Rob Roy, wrote Rob Roy.
Oh.
It's Walter Scott. Walter.
You got it, thank you, team. Where are we with time?
4:26.
It acts like you thought I wouldn't know what I was doing. So is it worth it?
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you, you know, finding that stuff that goes back, I've seen it to you, Mark. But tracing it back to some real sources was a surprise.